Welcome back to the dopest show you won't get sick of. I'm Spencer, and this is Sasha. I spent most of my 20s in federal prison, but I've been off heroin since April 9, 2010. Got a lot of stories about the stupid stuff I did to get put in prison. Also got a lot of stories about the crazy stuff that happened when I was actually in prison. And God forbid you end up in prison. I want to make some of the same mistakes I made. So, Peter Beach. The literal twilight zones of prisons. I used to tell people I was going to get out and talk about this place. I was going to write about it, speak about it, and everything else. And they said, won't do you any good. Nobody will believe you. It's that absurd of a place. It's that backwards of a prison. Okay? Now, before I get into that, I'm going to do 2 more videos today, so be looking out for them. There's a power outage today, so sorry if this comes up a little bit late. But anyway, be looking out for those 2 more videos I'm going to put up later if you watch regularly, just so you don't miss them. But I started at Petersburg Low. The judge ordered me to go to Morgantown Camp. I took an open guilty plea. My lawyer's like, well, he didn't really do it, so 0. He's been out on bond 2 years. He's done perfect. Give the kid a chance. The prosecution's like, well, the drug deal happened in his apartment. Give him 15 years. Judge said 0, 15, 8. And he came down off the stand. He's like, listen, I believe you can get your life right. I'm sending you to Morgantown Camp. It's a very nice place. They let the inmates go to the local community college. Now, my judge was 90 years old. He'd been a judge for 50 years. And I'm sure 20 years ago when it was club fed to the max, inmates could probably go to the community college. At Petersburg Low, they have inmates driving 18-wheelers. They have a CDL program. I mean, not at the camp. The camp. Camp is a lower security than a low. You'd guess low is the lowest. Go figure. It's not. Low security has 2 fences, all the razor wire, has the looks, everything else. No cameras in any unit at Petersburg Low. Other lows have cameras. Petersburg Low did not. The camp at Petersburg, no fences at all. People go down the hill to the river. One guy's going fishing with his buddy who'd pick him up in a boat. Guys meet girls out in the woods. And they get caught with actual bottles of liquor. None of that tomato wine. They're drinking real liquor. Lobster in the microwave, everything else. I was supposed to go to a camp, that type of place. You know, at Petersburg Low, you see them driving around the perimeter of the low and the medium. From the yard on the low and the medium, you could see the campers driving golf carts back and forth all across the place, having a good old time. Yeah, I was supposed to go to a camp. I spent 6 months at low security, and I was set to go to a camp. I got in trouble. I spent 90 days in the hole, in which time the SIS lieutenant wanted me to tell my buddy Pinto. I wouldn't tell on him. I said something very hateful after he threatened to have my mom put in prison for putting money on somebody's book so I could buy some mackerel. Try to connect dots that didn't exist, but it was wrong. You're not supposed to put money in other people's books. And I said something hateful, and he said, "You're going to Texas." He told me he was going to send me to Bloody Beaumont, and he tried to get me sent there, and they starved me in solitary. I went from 185 down to less than 165. And he'd have guards torment me, tap on the door in solitary, say, "You're going to have fun in Bloody Beaumont." Well, he put in for the transfer, and ultimately they're like, he's got camp points. This is a minor infraction, your personal beef. We're not sending him to Beaumont. So they just upped me to a medium security. So with camp points with the minor infraction, I got put into medium security, which never should have happened, but the BOP does what they want. And that was cheaper than the alternative of actually transporting me. So I ended up with the medium security. It's nothing like the low security. I tried telling a young gang member after I got back to the low security after spending 2 years at the medium security. He's like, "Man, there's no respect here. I got to get out this spot. I'm going to go to the medium." I said, "You don't want to go to this medium, man. It's not a normal medium. You're going to get approached by punks every day. They're going to proposition you and say some nasty stuff." "Oh, no, not me. They won't do that to me." Big blood, big old blood, dark skin, 6'6", 350. With face tattoos, dark skin, you still see his face tattooed. Good buddy of mine. And he said, "Listen, young brother, I spent time at the medium. They approached me. If they approach me, yeah, they gonna approach you too." Like, what? Really? And we had to explain to them, you don't want to go to that medium. So I ended up in the drug unit after spending a year at the medium, which was just one building down. The first building I was in, you enter an exterior set of stairs with a fence around it so you can't throw somebody off, to an open pot on the 3rd and 4th floor. From the 3rd floor, I had a room that overlooked the whole yard. I got to see a whole lot of fights because I had a perfect view. It's the only wall of any unit that saw the yard. Now, I got put in the drug program, and I got put in the 1st floor in a 3-man room, which I wouldn't ever go in a 3-man room because the bunk is literally 7-8 foot high. You can't sit up straight. It's impossible. It's that close to the ceiling. But what's even worse is how they have this prison set up is the yard is attached to this building. So Peter Beach is attached to my frickin' cell. I have a window. People come and lay up against the wall that my window's on. People just walk across here. Let me break it down for you. It's about a 50 by 50 foot area. At dinner time, if you don't want to eat dinner, before they start calling the buildings one at a time in order by who passed the best inspection of cleanliest building on a 2-week rotation, they do rec move. So if you don't want to go to dinner, you can go to rec. They let them out first. You go to rec. They lock you in there. You don't get to go to dinner if you do that. There are literally 100 people that congregate in this 50 by 50 foot area. Okay, this is part of Peter Beach. It's like the entrance to it. And they trade pictures. Okay, now there's a number of inmates. Yeah, you're in prison. Yeah, I had dirty magazines. I mean, I'm a straight dude. No disrespect nobody, but what am I going to do? That ain't me. So I had dirty magazine, and I get people, but some people got weird with these pictures, collecting them like weird. Now, for regular convicts have pictures of people look like strippers, stuff like that. There was one called Next Door Nikki, a trailer trash girl that had paw prints tattooed on her, and for some reason everybody was obsessed with, like all the convicts were obsessed with. Wasn't even that good looking, but giant implants, everything else, that's normal. But there were all these chomos that would congregate out there, and they made the overwhelming majority, and they'd go out there and they'd trade pictures. There were 3 or 4 picture guys that would have a gym bag that was literally packed with 4 or 5 binders full of pictures. And the chomos didn't like those type of pictures. They liked pictures of adult stars that looked like they were underdeveloped and had braces. And they would trade out there. And my window, people lay up in the grass that was, it's a concrete area, but there's about a 20-foot area that's up against the ground level floor. Now, I was in a cell with this guy named Bobby Joe. Bobby Joe is funny. He looked like Keebler Cookie Man if he was inbred, had crazy ears that went like this. He'd say, he called everybody honey. He had a pawn shop in Tennessee. It was a legal pawn shop. He'd buy stuff in it, and he got caught in a little speed, weapons, stuff like that. Ended up going there, and he was funny as could be. He'd never seen a black person before he went to prison. Lived in one of those type of backwoods places, and he wasn't racist at all, but he grew up around a certain way, and everybody loved him. All black dudes like, what's up, Bobby Joe? He'd say, what up, Mo? He'd adopt the culture, the slang of different people, and they got kicks off him. That was a funny dude. We'd have to walk with him around Peter Beach because they're chomos, but there were so many of them, they'd fight. They actually had a shot collar, but they weren't about nothing. They never organized any sort of way. The shot collars went by duct tape because, well, he duct taped people up and put them in a van and did bad things. Awful. So, Peter Beach, people would lay on these blankets out there. It was unlike anything you've ever seen. Now, 40% of the people at Petersburg are chomos from all over the country. Texas, California, even Alaska. They get beat up, shanked out there, they send them to Petersburg. 10% are gang dropouts at Petersburg. You see a Sereno from California ends up in Petersburg. They did not send you there just because they spread y'all out because you have too much power. No, they've got places with 200 Serenos out west. They didn't send you to Petersburg because of that. So you could tell who was a gang dropout if they were from anywhere other than D.C., Maryland, Virginia, North, South Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia. They were a gang dropout, more than likely. Another reason you could end up there is if it was time for you to do the RDAP drug program. Not every prison has that. Petersburg has that. So inmates regularly get transferred from other serious mediums to Petersburg Medium to do the RDAP drug program, which takes a year off your sentence. They got a religious program. It gives you 9 months halfway house, get you out 9 months earlier. They've got BS vocational stuff people transfer there. So half the people are local, half the people are weirdos. And it created a weird culture, a very weird culture. Chomos deviants, they got some type of high energy where they got to be doing that deviancy stuff. And you put them together, they're just going to be shacking up together. But what it also created that was very unusual and blew my mind and disgusted me was there were gang members that was not sliding the room with the chomos. Now, first off, they're doing this, then they're going to the visiting room kissing their wife. Imagine they got a wife that's faithful the entire time they're in prison, and they bring something home to her from prison. That's messed up. Now live your life anything you want, and and actually respect to the trans community. There were like 3 or 4 trans people ended up in the RDAP drug program in the small groups. One was a cartel smuggler, one was the plug for blow in D.C. apparently. I don't believe any of the trans people that I remember hearing stories about. I wasn't friends with any, so I couldn't tell you, but you hear what people are in for. You hear stories, and in the drug program, you have to talk about why you got put in prison. So being in these small groups, I heard a lot of stories from different people. I don't think there was one trans person that was a chomo. That's a whole other set of stuff. But just as respect to their community, I don't think there was one. Most of the chomos, it's pretty easy to spot middle-aged white men that were very well spoken, didn't seem like they belonged in prison. Of course, when I first got there, it's cold outside, a small white guy, clean shaved, they probably thought I was. Just realistically, I had to make an announcement at Peel Line letting them know, I'm not one of your buddies, not part of your crew, I'm not going to be your friend, I'll put a piece of steel in you, quit whispering and looking at me. I looked young and boyish, and you saw that. On Peter Beach, what you saw the weirdest assortment. It looked like a NAMBLA convention. If you've seen South Park, you'll get a laugh off of that. But anyway, basically, these chomos, the older chomos, like young boyish people. People that looked like they were younger than they were. One named Yogi, bald head with a rat tail coming out of the middle, all kinds of Buddhist tattoos, leathery skin with a gap between every tooth, probably about 5.5 foot tall, 160 pounds. But he little tiny arms, little tiny legs with a big round belly. He got him boy, it looked like a Boy Scout. Looked like poster boy for Boy Scouts. Okay? Baby fat and everything. Chomo too. But you'd see him, this older man, with this guy who looks like he's a kid. And you'd see these people shacked up, laid on these blankets, all across, with their pant legs pulled all the way up, tanning out there, or with the blanket over top of them in the summer, stuff going on. Yeah, it was like that. And it was accepted. At orientation, we were told, this is their prison. You better not touch them. If you do, you'll get a hate crime. And I'm thinking, Martin Luther King didn't do all this stuff for civil rights so chomos could get their own group. You don't get a group. You don't get a hate crime. I mean, we can argue about religion and politics all day. I don't do that. I don't argue. I don't talk to people about that stuff. But we can all agree, you mess with the kids, then you got to go. You need to be given a hard time. And, some of the people, the frequents you'd see out there, Strawberry. Want to know why they call me Strawberry? It's Deviant from California. I don't even want to say what everybody was in there for. It's just that bad. He passed away. I looked up a picture of him to show somebody, and he looks freak. He's about 350 pounds with the part in his hair, glasses, looks like And he'd approach anybody. See, I stood in Peel Line, and Peel Line's 100-some people long, and you'd stand in that line, you'd hear people talk. And I remember one day I first got there, and I heard him approaching his little group of weirdos, and he's like, so tell me about the new boys that just got on the compound. And I'm just like, oh my God, what am I at? No disrespect to certain communities, a certain lifestyle, but these chomo, I mean, it's predatory. It's not a matter of lifestyle. This is a matter of sickness and deviancy. They aren't going to get fixed. They aren't going to change. They have a program for them, but I don't believe in reformation of people that do that to kids. And I think that's something a lot of people can do. So you'd see a number of freaky people out there. I told the story about Ghost and his little douchebag sidekick, Millhouse. Millhouse seemed like a normal white dude, kind of quirky, but he went on that rampage with Ghost, and then he ended up pairing up with this guy. Looked like a 12-year-old boy. He's probably about 5 foot tall, 90 pounds. Little Filipino looking fella. And they'd go out there in Peter Beach, they have a blanket, and they'd sell like magazines and stuff like that. They'd have like they'd have like a whole little culture out there. The Chomos did a whole little culture of stuff. People be selling stuff, people be under blankets in the summer, and the guards be letting this happen. If you were a dealer there, somebody in for a normal crime, you got treated like you were less than, and that sucks, and that's not right. That they were catered to as they were, and there were a number of times that people picked on them, and they got caught in the office, and they're like, "What's your problem with the sex offenders?" And one of the most common responses, Gordo and Bobby Joe both said the same thing. Bobby Joe, who was funny, he said, "Honey, take them home to your kids and see how much you like them." And I thought that was the funniest thing. Oh, he'd torment him. He'd get drunk, and we'd have to babysit him. We'd have to walk around in the yard with him, make sure he didn't get beat up, because some of them would fight. You know, Sternak, the DMI enforcer, he knocked one of them out one time. It was funny. He was his another member of DMI, Lil Kev, he kept throwing a football and intentionally overthrowing it and hitting this guy. And the guy came up to do something about Lil Kev. Sternak just reached, grabbed Lil Kev's shoulder, poop, knocked the guy out. Picked him back up, said, "Now listen, I didn't want to have to do that to you, but you're going to hit my buddy here," and, you know, couldn't have that happen. Sternak had a one-hitter quitter. That was some funny stuff. But this Peter Beach thing, you don't go out after night. Ever. Freaks come out at night. No. There was a time I heard about, you know, didn't go out after night. You don't go out after night. I heard somebody came back in the drug unit. They're like, "You won't believe what just happened." I said, "What?" And they're like, "There were 4 people, each of them holding up a blanket, making a square with 2 people in the middle of it. And there's a guard overlooking all this, allowing this to happen." You know, these are not people, you know, of typical persuasion, and it was allowed to happen, and you were made less than, and you were treated bad if you weren't a chomo there. Guards became best friends with them. But this Peter Beach was like, I can't explain it to you. There's like a snowflake, I talk like this. And, you know, the guy who I bought the pizza from found out giving out $5 Hummers and stuff like that. I got mad at the guy who bought the pizza from him, because I'm a hypochondriac. I thought I got something for probably about a month after that. And Chomo too, so no good. But being on the ground level floor, the RDAP drug program in that 3-man room, people sat up right up, and if you didn't have your window covered, there were peeping toms that come peep at you using the bathroom. I mean, you leave a quarter-size space. I mean, that's not right. They should have something where they can't sit up against that wall. And then if you cover your window, you get in trouble. So you're supposed to just leave the window open and you the toilet while somebody's looking at you watching it. That's what they allow. That's what they condone at this place. That's why I had to deal. I moved out of that cell quick. Number one, Bobby Joe, I was getting ready to smack him. He was funny. I thought he was hilarious. I thought it was going to be great. I'm going to have a fun time in here. But when you live with him, he's one of those people that starts to try to pick at you. I don't deal with that. I don't pick at people because I don't like being picked at. Don't dish it if you can't take it. Well, I don't dish it. I can't take it. And he was in bed one day. I jammed my face. I said, "Now tell you one more time." He kept on doing an inch away from his face, like, "You better not touch me. If you touch me, I said, "Go on, get up then." And that was the last day, and I moved out of there. I moved in with the Serrano shot caller upstairs and Dickie, the fake Muslim. Ironically, Dickie moved in with Bobby Joe, then had his whole set of problems with him. Oh, that's how he got that nickname. Dickie was from Bobby Joe too. He has a big, Middle Eastern name, and Bobby Joe couldn't pronounce it, so he called him Dickie. There were a lot of names he got called: Sick Dickie, Sucker Dickie, stuff like that. Don't like to be vulgar on here, but it was kind of funny. He got clowned on a lot. But I moved in with Serrano upstairs because on the second floor, people can't see in the window. You know, it was a whole lot nicer of a living condition than what I had been living in, and I couldn't live on that ground level floor. The stuff that goes on there, the stuff that's advocated and everything else, and it's just the biggest bunch of weird stuff that goes on in the subculture of what it is, because like I said, it's not, there aren't SNY protection places, but where it's 40% chomos, and there are all these people that are punks, you see all these gang members, and it creates this weird culture where this was more of a predatory place, I personally believe, than any other prison, because they were just set up to be targets, and stuff like that. But what it also does is the chomos set up, they should be targets. But what it also sets up is it also sets up weak people who aren't willing to stand up for themselves to be targets and be preyed upon too. So it created this weird culture where you've got all these weirdos and stuff like that. But then there was so many people that preyed upon these people that if you weren't a chomo and you were weak or something like that and you weren't willing to speak up, stand on your feet, you can be the littlest guy. I'm going to let you know now, all this prison stuff, but you got to be this. I've seen the littlest guys be willing to stand up for themselves, get in a fight, bust guys' lip like their eye, they get whooped anyway, and nobody messes with them. If you're just like, "Do with me as you may, sir," then, it's going to happen. But if you're willing to say, no, it's probably not, you're going to be fine, It's most people that fear I'd rather take a whooping with fist than take a whooping with a meat shank. Lord have mercy. I mean, getting in a fight isn't that bad. It's scary and people think, but it's not that bad. You know, getting in a fight. You know, it's people fear it so much that they end up crossing to the other side with some of these predators. Willie Moe, it's nice to have a friend. Being somebody new here who had to tell about himself. You'd see him out there with him. He was a drug dealer, but he went out there with Chomo to get him. He'd have him a steady, and he'd be preying upon people. But he's one of the people preyed upon people. You'd see him laying out there, Peter Beach. Ah, Lord have mercy. I've got a lot of specific stories about this place, but I just wanted to give an outlook. There's that first 50 by 50 foot area in which they trade pictures and stuff of that sort. And then once you go out the gate to the left, away from the football field and all that, there's just a big grass area in which the blankets and all that are laid upon. Okay, and that's where everybody, and it's like this whole little separate community over there of Chomos that have these pictures of adult stars that look underdeveloped with braces, laying under blankets, doing their own thing, and just being allowed to do it as they may. There is a prison in which they are catered to. There is a prison in which they are getting it easier than they ever should be in their entire life. There is a prison in which if you do something to them or even say something to them hateful, they will tell on you and you will have serious repercussions. It still happens. I tormented them verbally as best as I could, and I've got some stories, but I hospitalized one through words. I gave somebody a heart attack with 2 other people through words. He deserved it. He was old guy, and he's a Chomo, I'll just say that. But man, and there's some stories about people getting them and I'll get to in a little bit, but this was a freak show of a place, man. The people you'd see laid up out there, it was something else. And all these hard gang members that was in it for drug charges would be laid up out there with them. Not all of them, but a good many more than you would ever imagine. Certain shot callers of certain gangs were known to sleep in a room with certain punks that were Chomos. Now, okay, if you live a certain way, no judgment on that. But I think any person that's open, with that and lives that lifestyle can admit they wouldn't sneak in a room with somebody that's messed with kids, So, but these guys were slipping in a room with people that mess with kids. So it ain't against the lifestyle, it's against people that mess with kids. That's my thing. And they're overlooking that just so then they can get their gratification. That's wrong. It's not right. And if you wouldn't believe some of the people, and out of respect, knowing better than to mention certain people of certain gangs and stuff like that were doing it, I won't mention that, but it would blow your absolute mind. There was one guy who came down from a USP. Buddy Satan, who came down from a USP, told me about it. He's like, yeah, so-and-so's doing it. And I'm like, no. And he said, yeah. And he said something to him in front of me, and he's like, it's a whole lot different. And he said, it's a whole lot different story here than it is at USP McCrary, isn't it? And the guy looked at me, just acknowledging what he done. And I was like, oh, man, he really is. So anyway, this was it. I'm going to do 2 more videos today on other stuff. I had a power outage this morning. Sorry if this comes up late. I hope you liked the video. If you did, press the like button. If not, I've wasted 23 minutes and 40 seconds of your life in which you'll never get back. I had a mild panic attack today. When the power went completely out, the house is silent. I have to have background noise at all time. Phone did a little bit of that, but it sent me into type of space. Stayed up late watching the UFC fights last night too, which were incredible, by the way. But we got 2 more videos coming, so be looking for them after this one. Y'all have a good one.